What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video we are going to be ranking every single title fight in 2024 that has either obviously taken place or the few remaining that are booked, and I'm going to be ranking them all from worst to best or from least to most in terms of anticipation and excitement going into the title fight. This will be personal based, so if you disagree, don't take it too seriously. This is just my opinion. This is how excited I am about each, or how excited I was about each fight, and then obviously the ones that are still coming up. I could have just waited and done this at the end of the year once all of them have taken place, but I think this weekend's main event between Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway is one of the most anticipated fights of the year. One of the most anticipated fights in recent UFC history, if I'm being honest, to me. But yeah, you guys let me know your picks in the comments. How would you rank them? There's 21 fights by the end of the year. There will have been 21 title fights to take place. So yeah, lots of ones to go through. I won't really discuss like how the fight went because this is all going to kind of be about the pre-fight stuff. But yeah, let's get started with number 21, Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. This was the first title fight that took place in the year 2024, and it was the least anticipated in my opinion. I just don't think anyone really gave a fuck about Raquel Pennington and Mayra Bueno Silva, to be honest. It was overshadowed by it was basically just a secondary title fight, which no one really considered a real title fight on that on that 297 card with Strickland and Duplessis, and I just don't think anyone really gave a fuck, to be honest. Like, was anyone looking forward to this fight? It just felt like a normal fucking 5-round women's Apex main event. Like, there was no atmosphere, nothing happened, it was boring, and no one expected anything from it to begin with. Let's move on, though, to the next fight, and it's another Raquel Pennington fight. Surprise, surprise, she's just not a very interesting champion. It's a fight with Juliana Pena. Now, this was slightly more anticipated than Bueno Silva, obviously, just because at least Pena yaps, and it was I think it was on a less overshadowed card. Like, obviously, this was still not the best fight of the card by any stretch of the imagination, but Kayla was on the same card. There was a bit more excitement around it, I guess. Pena came back, she was yapping. No one really gave a fuck, but I do think it was slightly more interesting, stylistically, or slightly more interesting, I guess, with just Pena being in the fight than the Bueno Silva fight. But let's move on. We got two more women's MMA fights to go. Shevchenko versus Grasso is coming in at the 19 spot. I was somewhat interested to see how this would go. I would not say I was excited or hyped. I did not feel any nerves when these two were staring off in the cage. That's how you know that the fight's anticipated, because you start getting nerves and stuff when you see them in the cage. I was not getting nervous. I was not feeling like, oh, what's going to happen between Shevchenko and Grasso. It's already happened twice. I don't think there was like there was not much anticipation. I do think this was kind of just a secondary title fight on 306, which no one really cared about. This fight, but it was still, I guess, like a good way to close off the trilogy. People didn't know how it was going to go. And Shevchenko, and people actually give a fuck about Grasso, and they care somewhat about Shevchenko, I guess. Whereas no one cares about Pena or Pennington or Bueno Silva. So yeah, it's slightly more interesting than those ones. But the last women's MMA fight was Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. This one was the most anticipated for me out of the women's fights, just because Weili I do find interesting as a fighter, and I do actually have some level of care about what happens with her career. Like, she's probably the only female fighter that I'm like actively rooting for in fights, and that I want to do well. So Weili Xiaonan was actually a somewhat competitive fight stylistically, I guess, is what it turned out to be. Weili kind of just outgrappled her. But going into it, there was a bit of interest. There was like, oh, maybe Xiaonan's a bit too quick on the feet. But yeah, I think none of these women's fights were that anticipated. There's no Nunes, and even Nunes fights aren't. I think the only fight for a women's fight that would then be more anticipated than a male MMA title fight would be if Kayla Harrison fought Nunes. I think that would be the only one where that might end up being more anticipated than, some of the lesser title fights of that year. Anyway, let's move on to the male title fights, and the least anticipated of the men title fights in 2024, in my opinion, was Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley. This just didn't feel that exciting to me. Now, maybe you guys disagree. Maybe you guys were really hyped in the build-up to this. I just really didn't care. I was unbelievably confident that Sean O'Malley was just going to beat him up on the feet in 50-44 and whoop his ass. Like, I think my official prediction was 50-43. I thought this was going to look very Holloway Cater-esque, and it did. it was just O'Malley being way too quick, too powerful, or too fast, and just too elusive to let Cheeto have anything. Like, there was just no moment where this fight was competitive. It was fun. Don't get me wrong, it was an entertaining fight, but like I'm talking about the hype going into it. Everyone knew it was an undeserved title shot. It's just harder to get excited for undeserved title shots, to be honest. So yeah, I was just not looking forward to this fight at all. I mean, I was like, it's going to be fun, but I really just didn't care. There was no nerves. There was no like, oh, what's going to happen? So yeah, I was really not that interested in this matchup. But next up, we got Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards coming in at the number 16 spot. Look, it was interesting because, you know, both of them were on win streaks. Both of them clearly very high level welterweights, clearly at the top of their game. But it's just impossible to get excited for really any fight involving Belal Muhammad. Unless the other guy's really interested, which I'll talk about the Shavkat fight in a sec. But Leon Edwards, again, he's just not an interesting champion. I was excited for the Leon fight with Usman in the rematch. Even the Covington fight, I wasn't that excited. I just wanted to see if Covington gets slept. But there was no real like bad blood here. There was no crazy trash talk. There was nothing that got this fight like going viral on social media, and it was a typical Belal Muhammad 49-46 decision, which was not expected by me. So it turned out to be more interesting, I think, than I expected. I thought Leon was going to tap low kicks at range the whole time. But yeah, Belal Muhammad, Leon Edwards, I just really wasn't looking forward to this that much. Next up, we got Steve Erceg versus Alejandro Pantoja. Now, they're coming at the number 15 spot. I think I was actually just interested and intrigued in this fight. One, because I'm Australian. I was supporting a fellow Aussie, Steve Erceg. But two, because I do like Pantoja. He's one of my favourite fighters. Which I know a lot of people will be like, why you like Pantoja? I don't know, I just like him. You know, some of those fighters you just can't explain why you like them. Like, you just do. Like, that's Pantoja. I just like the guy. But I was just actually excited based on like how random the title fight was. Like, that was the selling point, was like, why the fuck is this happening? But it's kind of cool. And I did actually think it was going to be quite competitive. I did think it was going to be a quite interesting fight. I picked Pantoja by decision. I was right. You know, some people called it a robbery. Which it's not an impossible case to make. It's quite reasonable to say Erceg could have won that fight. But yeah, it was just interesting based on like the unknown. Like, when you put a guy in there who just really, there's not much tape on him in the UFC, it is kind of like he might just show up and do really well. And I did have that feeling that he might have a good performance. I ultimately did pick Pantoja. But yeah, I was quite interested in this fight, and it was actually quite tense watching it. It's not one of those title fights that you kind of zone out and it's like, yeah, this guy's winning. It's like, it was quite interesting. So, yeah, number 15 spot for Pantoja Erceg. Next up, we got Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades. Now, I'm always excited to watch Tom Aspinall fight, but I think the lack of anticipation for this was like, I just knew what was going to happen. Like, I just didn't think Curtis Blades had a chance. I picked Aspinall by first, like, 2 minutes KO. And I was correct. He got it done immediately. But look, I was anticipating this because I wanted to see what would happen afterwards in terms of John Jones. I wanted to see if Dana would start really being like, okay, let's actually maybe try and push Jones, my boyfriend's John, to actually maybe take this fight. Which ultimately he then, like, he gave Aspinall props and then immediately is like, but John Jones is the greatest ever. Aspinall, he's got a long way to go before he's even in that category with John Jones. So yeah, I was anticipating like the post-fight kind of discussions, but I wasn't really that interested in the fight going in. I just didn't think Curtis Blades was going to be competitive at all. Next up, we got Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. Now, I'm always excited to watch Pereira fight, but again, I was convinced that Pereira was going to just smoke him. Look, it ended up being a great fight. Now, if we're ranking the title fights based off how entertaining they were, this is top 3 easily. Maybe even number 1. But going into it, this is just based off anticipation. And going into it, I just was not anticipating it that much. Obviously, you get nervous when you see Pereira fight because it's like, ooh, big scary Pereira, big scary Politan, he's gonna kill someone. But Khalil, I just didn't think he was good. Now, Khalil impressed me a lot. He definitely showed out a good performance for himself and surprised me, surprised a lot of people. But I'm only talking about anticipation. I'm only talking about how excited I was going in. And I would say this was the least, I'm turning into Curtis Blades here, it was the least anticipated of Pereira's title fights this year, in my opinion. Let's move on, though, to the number 12 spot. Another Pereira title fight is Jamal Hill. Again, I was just anticipating Pereira just to KO him immediately and win. So it's not like I was looking forward to this a lot. I was nervous. Obviously, you get nervous when you watch Pereira fights. Everyone kind of the stare offs are always intense. It's always a good watch. But I wasn't anticipating this to be competitive. It wasn't, so I was correct again. But I don't know. Jamal Hill got some interest going. Jamal Hill made it interesting, but I don't know. Jamal Hill just doesn't draw that much intrigue to me. I just never thought he was that good. I picked against him against Glover. He impressed me there, but he came back a year and a half later, or a year and a few months later, and I just never thought he was all that. So I did think Pro was going to smoke him. It was on a big spotlight, but I actually think Gaethje Holloway, which I'll talk about in a sec, because I will include that. I do think that kind of overshadowed this. I think everyone's like, oh, it's a good main event. It's going to end in a KO. But I didn't think Jamal Hill was going to do very well at all. Anyway, number 11, Pantoja versus Kaya Sakura. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck? Why are you so looking forward to a random flyweight title fight with a guy making his debut? And the reason is because fucking my eyes laying up. Oh, I can't see. The reason is because I think Pantoja is going to have a difficult time with Kai Sakura, but I'm also just interested to see how Kai Sakura does in the UFC. Like, if we bring over like Johnny Eblen, or if we bring over like Usman Nurmagomedov once Islam leaves, or something like that, and they just get a title shot immediately. Sure, you can say undeserved. Sure, you can say, oh, why is he getting the title fight? But you can't lie. You're interested. When you haven't seen a guy fight in the UFC, you want to see him fight in the UFC. And if Kai Sakura, there is just that intrigue of like, what if Kai Sakura just comes in and just fucking KOs Pantoja and becomes champ? Like, it would be crazy. So that is the intrigue here. I think I'm always excited to watch Pantoja fight. Like, I just think he always brings a solid scrap. Like, I know recently he's been going decision, but he still pushes forward and he still like kind of just gets hit a lot, which is why his fights are entertaining, to be honest. But yeah, I'm interested to see Kai Sakura. I want to see how he goes in the UFC. I want to see if he's UFC caliber. If he just gets smoked by Pantoja, that'll probably not be the best look. But if he has a competitive fight, even in a loss, like if he goes to a decision and hurts Pantoja maybe on the feet and then gets taken down, if he just gets subbed in round one, it's going to be like, okay. But if he, like, we've got more to look forward to, and I want to see how this guy's going to do against other fighters in the division. So I'm looking forward to seeing Kai Sakura. If this was just like Pantoja versus Albazi, it would be way lower down on the list. But just because of the intrigue with Kai Sakura, that's what I'm looking forward to. Number 10, Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. Now, the names involved, you're going to be excited to watch an Islam Makhachev or a Dustin Poirier fight, no matter who they're fighting. And if they're fighting each other, you're just going to be excited. And going into fight week, it kind of picked up some steam. Originally, this got announced and I'm like, yep, it's just a kind of filler title fight. It's just there to be on this pay-per-view card, and it's going to happen, and Islam's probably going to win. But as fight week kind of ramped up, there was some intense stare-offs, there was some stuff said at the press conferences or whatever, like, it got interesting a little bit, and people started, like, the shine bright like a diamond meme started going around, and we all were hoping that Poirier could pull it off. Obviously, I don't think anyone was overly expectant that he would. I think we all picked Makhachev, but Dustin, we all wanted to see how he would go. We all knew this was his last title fight, probably. And yeah, it was just kind of, you can't tell me no, you weren't looking forward to this. Like, I did think Islam was going to run through him, but I was still like, yeah, I want to see Islam Makhachev fight. I want to see Dustin Poirier fight, and it was just going to be interesting. Number 9, though, Yuri Prohaska versus Alex Pereira 2. This was the short notice fight at 303. Now, if this was on a full camp, I kind of wouldn't have been that excited. Like, I still thought Pereira... The thing is with Pereira is he's one of the most entertaining fighters in the sport. He's one of the biggest stars in the sport right now. But I think all of his... Uncle Live is going to be my most anticipated matchup with Pereira, because I think all the other guys, you kind of just know. They're going to standle them, and they're going to be retarded and get KO'd. And that's what I expected here with Yuri. Now, the taking it on short notice was like, oh, we got a new main event, crazy. The hype... Like, if you announce a main event a week out from it happening, or 2 weeks out from it happening, it gives you time. It leaves a short enough period of time that the hype can't kind of die down. Like, if this was announced 2 months out, or a month out, I think people would have been like, yeah, it's cool. But it was like 2 months out, so the whole dialogue from like day one of the fight being announced, like 2 weeks later to the fight happening, was just like short notice, Pereira's injured, you had 2 broken toes or whatever, like he's stepping in on short notice. That was the whole dialogue here. But ultimately, I did just think he was going to win. I wasn't all that expectant that Yuri was going to succeed in this fight, and obviously he didn't, but still, everyone's excited for a Yuri fight, everyone's excited for a Pereira fight. So, number 8 though, Merab versus O'Malley. Look, I did have the expectation that this might end up being boring. Look, I picked O'Malley by KO, but my initial kind of lean on this fight was a Merab just boring decision, and there was always the possibility of that happening, so you're like, this fight might not end up being a fucking barn burner. But it was just the competitiveness and the, I don't know who's going to win this. Look, was I overly nervous going into this? No, I'm not really that invested in either guy's career. Neither of them are my favorite fighters. But it was kind of like, yeah, it's just really competitive, and it's clearly the number 1 and number 2 guy in the division right now. Obviously, you can say Umar, but at that moment, it's the rightful contender getting his title shot, and that's what we wanted to see. And I know Merab's not the most thrilling guy, but I think I was more excited for this, more anticipating this than I was Jamal Hill, Pereira, or Islam Poirier, or any of these other fights. I was looking forward to this one, unlike with Cheeto, because I think having a deserving contender does make a difference. Look, you could get if Conor gets a title shot, that's not going to just be not anticipated because it's undeserved. I'll be interested, obviously, but this one was definitely one of the more interesting title fights of the year. Going into it, of course, there was a lot of trash talk back and forth. A lot of things are over. Is Merab going to be able to just shoot in like a tard and not get sniped? And ultimately, he was able to shoot in like a tard and not get sniped, because O'Malley did kind of fight very timid and a very tepid pace. But anyway, number 7, Bilal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. Again, this is just competitive. It's number 1 versus number 2. This is going to be the welterweight version of Merab and Umar when it happens. So you got the undefeated guy, the undefeated OV guy versus the other one who had to take 20 fucking fights to get a title shot, who eventually won the belt and might not succeed in getting a first title defense, because their first title defense is going to probably be their only difficult matchup in the division. Maybe Bilal's got more difficult matchups than Merab does, but this fight is just very interesting. You can't tell me you're not looking forward to this one. Bilal, he's not overly entertaining, but I think Shavkat just makes everyone entertaining, and he's undefeated. That's always going to bring more anticipation into a fight if the guy's undefeated. Will they lose the O? No one knows. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a highly competitive, highly skilled matchup, which is sometimes all you need. You don't need big stars. You don't need big KOs. You just need competitive fights that people don't know which way they're going to go. Number 6, though, we got John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Now, I know someone's going to say fucking Dana White here in the comments. Look, I'm not that excited in terms of this is clearly not the fight that should be happening. I think we all agree that Tom Aspinall should be getting his shot. I think we all agree Stipe's kind of old, but I'm just interested to see Stipe fight, because, bro, you're going to call me a casual. If you didn't know, I'm 17 years old. So, the last time Stipe fought, I was 13. I didn't watch UFC at that time. I've not seen Stipe fight live. Now, you guys can call me a casual, but I've watched Stipe's fight since then, obviously. But I've never seen Stipe fight live, and I've only seen John fight live once, and that was against Garn. Now, that's going to make me seem like a massive casual, but I'm going to say, casual is not based off when you start watching the sport, it's how much you know about the sport now, and I feel like I know quite a lot. But anyway, yeah, these guys are just old heads, and as a result, I was not fucking in the stage of my life watching UFC when they fought most often. So Stipe, I want to see him fight. I want to see how he goes. I've seen him fight, obviously. I've seen him fight in Ngannou. I've seen him fight DC. I've watched those fights back. But yeah, I'm just interested to see how he shows up after 4 years. And even if you have been a guy who's been watching the sport for ages, and you are familiar with Stipe, I think everyone's kind of interested. Is Stipe going to show up completely washed? Because this fight might end up just being the least interesting thing ever, and John might just tackle him immediately and take him down and sub him. That could happen. DC's never been subbed. Stipe's never been subbed, I should say. I don't think DC has either. But Stipe's never been submitted, and his wrestling defense has historically been solid. DC got him with some, but I think John is a bit past it, and I think this matchup is slowly kind of growing on me in terms of interest. While yes, it should be Tom Aspinall versus John Jones, I do still think Stipe has a decent chance here. Maybe he's just old and washed, and maybe Jones is going to be just too good for him everywhere. I think John's striking is fucking mid. And I think he looked shit against Garn. I think Garn made him look mid on the feet. Now, Garn is a better striker, technique-wise, than Stipe. Stipe's got power, though. He's the first, real big body, kind of strong guy. Obviously, Garn was, big dude frame-wise, but not a strong guy, not a wrestler, not a guy who's really mixed the martial arts that much in his career. I think Stipe can do that. I think Stipe can put it on him on the feet. So I'm interested. I want to know how this fight goes. Now, obviously, we need to see Aspinall after that. That would be by far my most anticipated fight if Aspinall fought Jones. But yeah, I'm interested in this. I actually think Stipe's got a solid chance. I might pick him just for the lols and just not care if he loses because, like, who cares? He's going to lose anyway, probably. But I might pick him and be that guy who just says, yeah, I picked Stipe to beat John. And if I get it right, I'm a genius. But yeah, let's move on though. Number 5 spot, Strickland versus Duplessis. Again, just a highly competitive matchup. The shit talk, the build up with these two scrapping at fucking 296 in the crowd, that increased the hype. There was a lot of hype here. There was a lot of trash talk. But yeah, this was an interesting fight, and I just didn't know who was going to win. I picked Strickland by decision. Very close. Could have gone. And honestly, I've maintained this since the fight took place. If you picked Sean Strickland by decision compared to if you picked Dricus du Plessis by KO, the person who picked Strickland by decision was more right about the fight. Like, they were more correct. Unless you just picked Strickland by, like, 50-45 decision. Or, like, domination. But, like, I picked Strickland by 48-47 decision. That is a better prediction than MMA Guru picking Dricus by round 2 KO. Sure, I didn't on paper get the fight, like, the winner right. But, like, I knew how the fight was going to go. I knew it was going to go long. And I picked Strickland by close decision. Now, it was a very close decision, which I was correct about. But going into it, yeah, I just didn't know. I was like, maybe Dricus catches him. Maybe Strickland puts it on him late and finishes him. But I was like, this is just going to be 5 rounds of competitive fucking martial arts. And I was looking forward to it. And I think everyone was. And the hype and the build-up, the trash talk, press conference, all of that. Strickland crying on Theo Von's podcast. Like, I think all of that made it more anticipated. So, yeah. Let's go number 4, though. Another Dricus du Plessis fight against Israel Adesanya this time. I think there was just a bit more heat on this one. There was a little bit more intrigue. The press conference, Dricus literally made Izzy cry, which was quite amusing. That definitely raised the interest for me. The Battle of Africa stuff, Izzy just blatantly being racist in the build-up was quite funny. But yeah, the trash talk at the press conference was great. Are you taking the servants back with you to Africa? You don't know my story. My mum was studying to become a nurse. And me and my dad had to wake up at 5 in the morning. It's like, poor you, Izzy. I'm sorry. Woe is you. Like, Izzy's the biggest woe is me guy ever. Like, he acts like he's a fucking victim. Like, bro, welcome to the life of a tradie. People wake up at 5 a.m. It's not that uncommon. Like, you didn't have it rough growing up. Quit yapping. Anyway, I love just mixing in some insults to Izzy. But, yeah, this fight was crazy anticipated. Everyone was looking forward to this. Everyone wanted to see this fight play out. And, yeah, it delivered, definitely. Number 3, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. This was just, look, not an official undisputed title fight, but I'll count it. It was for a belt by any means. So Holloway, Gaethje, this was just interesting because you're like, these two are just going to slug. And it wasn't quite the thing of like, oh, the best guys in the world, they're going to have the most competitive fight. It's like, it's not like the fucking Bivol versus Bertabiev of MMA. Like, this was not what that was. This was just 2 guys that the fans know are going to fucking throw hands and KO each other. One of them's going to die. And one of them did, in fact, end up dying. So, yeah, I was looking forward to this one. But this was not like the, oh, I'm nervous, high stakes. This was like, fans, just sit back, fucking have your popcorn, and watch these two just slug and swing hands until one of them dies. So, yeah, that was really the intrigue about this one. I was like, they're just going to brawl and have a fucking fight of the year. Anyway, number 2, Ilia Topuria versus Alexander Volkanovski. I'll kick their head clean off his shoulders. And that's a fact. Fucking bald midget, little bald midget. Reminds me of a little retard Artem Lobov. Look, I was very looking forward to this fight. I was dreading it as well, which kind of made me way more nervous. I was more nervous for this fight than I'm going to end up being for Topuria Holloway. Obviously, if you can't keep track, that's going to be the number 1 pick. But yeah. This was because I've got more investment in Volk. I love Volk, bro. Volk's my guy. Volk's our little Pookie, like a little bald midget Volk. Like, I don't know. We just love Volk. And I really didn't want to see him lose, but I was like, oh, it's going to be so good if he wins, but so bad if he loses. So I was kind of dreading the fight. But number 1's Ilia versus Holloway. We know this. I've already talked about this on my predictions. I don't need to give a full in-depth breakdown of the fight. It's just going to be incredible. It's one of the more anticipated fights in recent UFC history. Ilia is undefeated. Will he lose his O? Will he defend the belt? Will Holloway's chin get cracked? There's just so many questions going into this fight which need to be answered. But Like, subscribe, that's the video done. Thanks for watching. Follow my Instagram, Left Lane MMA. Subscribe to my second channel as well. I'll put the link in the description. And yeah, drop some other videos you guys want to see. But otherwise, peace out.